Hey guys, I just wanted to get on and say thank you. I went on and checked my pricing video that I posted last week and I saw it already had a few hundred views, which I know in YouTube terms is not like a whole lot of views, but for me that's a lot. So I just want to say thank you guys so much for watching that, and I hope it was helpful. I know a few people had contacted me and there was a couple of comments that just said the information was super helpful, so I definitely wanted to say thank you, and I'm glad that that helped you guys. I did want to do a quick video. I told you guys I would be posting weekly, but I definitely wanted to do a quick video kind of as a follow-up to that video about pricing, just because I feel like there was a couple of things that maybe I could have focused a little more on in the discussion, and then also there was a couple of questions that I got from a couple of people, so I just wanted to kind of touch base on things like that. So really the first thing that I wanted to get into a little bit more in detail was talking about your hourly rate. We talked about your hourly rate being like a really important part of the equation that you use to do pricing. So I kind of wanted to talk a little bit more about the things that you should consider when calculating out that hourly rate. And like I said, I'm going to try to keep this down to like a 5-10 minute video, so bear with me. But you definitely want to consider the region that you live in. I think I talked about that briefly in the previous video, about how, you know, the cost of living in, let's say, New York is cheap. I mean, it's more expensive than the cost of living here in Atlanta, where I live and where I work. And so you definitely want to start off by kind of maybe researching what the average hourly rate for an event planner or event designer is in your area, and kind of start from there. So let's say, I think the national average, which I think I mentioned in the last video, is like $25 an hour. So you want to kind of start there from a starting point. The next thing that you really want to focus on is your experience, right? So if you have been doing this for 10 years of experience, not only are you doing this like, you know, clockwork, therefore you're more efficient, therefore things should take you less time to do, but it's just like it's more of a smooth process. Anytime you have a tenured person, just like any like 9-to-5 job, tenured people have been there for a while, they usually are making more because they've been there long enough to get raises, etc., etc. So you kind of want to have that same mindset when thinking about your experience, when considering your hourly rate. If you're just starting out, you know, the average is like 25 in your area, you probably don't want to be at 25 because your experience is not at the same level as those people that are starting off at $25 an hour. So you can definitely change that, and this is a fluid number. It can change as you go. You know, if you've been in business a couple of years and you started off at $25 an hour, just to keep that number out there, but you've been, you know, knocking these parties out the park and you're building a client base and stuff, you know, next year you might send out, you know, an email notification to, you know, people subscribe to your website saying, you know, prices will be increasing, you know, for this, please check out our website for new pricing updates or whatever it is. It should definitely change with inflation, it should change with your experience level, etc. So it doesn't, just because your hourly rate today is $25 an hour doesn't mean that a year or two from now it's going to be the same rate. The other thing that you want to consider is your expertise level. Expertise level and your experience level are kind of same, not the same thing, but kind of hand in hand. Expertise is like, for example, if you're a person who does balloons, balloon garlands, balloon structures, etc. When you start off, your expertise, your proficiency in that skill is not going to be the same as when you've done it, you know, for 2 years or 3 years. So as you continue doing event planning, different things, or event designing, different things, different aspects of the event planning or event designing, you're going to get better at. And so as your proficiency level, your expertise level increases, again, your rate can increase. Now, for example, with event planning, in event designing, I do a lot of my decor and a lot of my desserts and things. I make them personally, but I know I am not a treat maker, right? I know that I am not a balloon designer. I know that my primary service and my primary focus is our event planning, which again is the logistics side of it, and event designing. And so those are my big price. I mean, those are where I get the bang for my buck, right? If I'm doing a treat for a client, let's say, you know, I have a client and they want this to kind of be like a one-stop shop, and they want me to, you know, handle treats and designing and planning for them, I will definitely do treats for them, but my treats are going to be really simple. They're going to be really, as far as their design, they're going to be really basic, taste good treats. If you want somebody who and I'm going to charge accordingly for that. My hourly rate for the treat making is going to be according for my skill level with the treat making. I'm not going to charge the same as, you know, people who solely do treat making. They do fondant work, they do, you know, candy apples, they do all this stuff, because that skill level and that expertise, that level of expertise is not something that I have. And so therefore my treat making hourly rate is different from my event planning hourly rate. So I hope that kind of helps you. Oh, the other thing I was forgetting is you definitely want to consider when you're talking about your hourly rate, your target market for your client. So if you, again, I think I briefly touched on this in the previous video, but if your target market is like, you just want to do small parties for kids, like, 5 to 10 kids for like themed Chuck E. Cheese parties or different things like that, you're not going to want to place your hourly rate at the same as like a wedding planner's hourly rate, right? Because obviously the logistics of a wedding are way above and beyond that of a 4-year-old's Chuck E. Cheese baby shark party. You know what I mean? So that's another thing that you want to take into consideration, your target market. Again, your target market can be something that is fluid and might change over time. You might start off and say, I'm just going to do kids parties, and then as time goes on and your skills develop, you might say, okay, I want to get into weddings, because weddings are really where the big bucks are as far as event planning goes. But there's a reason for that. The reason is because the logistics and the amount of effort and work that it takes to execute weddings is way beyond what it takes for you to execute like a child's party. So keeping that in mind, like the type of parties that you're doing, the type of client base that you're promoting to. If you're promoting to weddings to people who are looking for a wedding planner, then you definitely want to charge more, because wedding planners make a lot more. If you're doing parties that are just, for smaller kids parties, you want to charge a little bit less. If you're looking to do parties that are like high-end glam, like celebrity kids parties, that's a whole nother, client base as well. So you want to price accordingly to that. The one thing I would say not to do is to necessarily change up your hourly rate based on like a client to client basis, or based on like, okay, I normally do kids parties and this is my hourly rate, but now I have an opportunity to work with a celebrity and I'm just going to tax for this celebrity. I know a lot of event planners do that, but I just think that you should price fair. Your hourly rate should stay the same for whatever the logistics are. Where you'll get more of a profit, let's say, for working for doing like a celebrity party versus another party, is not changing your hourly rate. It's the amount of hours that you're putting into that event. Because again, if you're making $25 an hour or whatever it is, and you're planning a younger kids party, that's not going to take the same amount of hours that it would take to execute a huge, celebrity event. So that's where you're making the money. You're making the extra money is in the hours, not necessarily your hourly rate. So I wouldn't go back and forth and change that regularly. I would kind of keep that the same. Or if you're going to change it on like a year-to-year basis or an experience level basis, not per client. So I think I was pretty clear as far as your hours to plan, kind of calculating out your hours for your event. You should calculate out any type of calls or communications with your client, how long it takes you to respond to emails for that client, driving back and forth to venues to do coordinating with them, phone conversations to do coordinating with them, driving back and forth to pick up supplies, any type of labor hours that pertain or are directed towards the specific event should be calculated when you're finding out the cost, or should be considered when you're finding out the cost. Again, you're not always going to know that number. You're not going to know that number off the top of your head, and it's going to be harder for you to kind of estimate that number in the beginning, because you don't really know how long something will take you. That's going to get better as you gain experience and you kind of have an idea, okay, this person wants X, Y, and Z. I know that's going to take me about 20 hours to plan. But definitely track it in the beginning so that you can figure out how many hours that you're dedicating to events. And then, like I said, as far as the material cost goes, you want to consider not only the actual physical material costs of, the decor or the rental items, which we talked about, creating a rental list. but you also want to consider your overhead, like I said, gas, printing costs, anything like that. You kind of want to calculate. I would say the best way to do that is like once you've had a good year or about an average year of business for yourself, is to kind of go through and calculate. You should save all the receipts that you're using for your business. So if you don't already have a separate business bank account that you can easily go and pull invoices from, definitely make sure that you're in some way tracking all of the expenses of anything that you're paying for your business, not just the material for an individual party, but any expenses like printer ink, gas, when you go get gas. Like, keep all of those receipts so you can tally it up at the end of the year. Then let's say divide that by the average amount of events that you had that year. So if you had 50 events that year and you spent, whatever amount of money on your overhead, your gas, printing costs, print ink, etc., tools, equipment, whatever, you're going to divide that by how many events that you had to kind of get an average amount per event that you spend in overhead costs. So that number should always be considered when you're in your material costs on top of the actual physical material that you're buying for the event. So hopefully that was a little bit more clear of a breakdown of the equation, and I want to take a second to go ahead and answer some questions that people have asked me since posting the video. So I'm going to go ahead and read a couple of those. So the first question that I got was from Shonda in Dallas. And she asked how can she apply this equation to doing packages. So that was, I got that question a couple of times actually, and really it's pretty much the same thing. So whatever you're including in your package, so if you have a package, let's say for like birthday parties, and you're like, this package comes with 10 paper boxes, 10 table settings, 10 cups, 10 hats, whatever, you would take your hourly rate times however many hours it will take you to assemble that package and again, consider, consultations, figuring out the communication between you and the client, getting all that material together, etc. Calculate that as your hours, and then you want to add the actual material cost, so the cost of all of the items that's being included in the package, and that equals your base cost, and times that base cost by whatever your profit margin is that you want to make. So it's really the same equation. You're just applying it to a package, a set package, instead of applying it to an individual party. Now, there are a lot of benefits to having packages versus there's a lot of advantages to having packages, and there's also a lot of advantages to doing just individual parties. For me, part of my motto, or one of my selling points for my business, is that I always have a party design that's unique to every customer, never cookie cutter. I don't really like for my events to look or have a similar layout to other events. Sometimes I see that with event planners, is that you can kind of tell that it's kind of the same exact layout or setup, but just a different theme. Which I'm not knocking that, honestly. From an entrepreneur standpoint, that makes it a lot easier, because it's quicker, it's more efficient, and you know exactly how something's going to be set up. You're just kind of changing up some type of aesthetics, and it's easier for you to manage costs that way, because you're not integrating new elements every event. But for me, it was really important to me that I gave clients a unique experience every single time, and that their party looked very, very unique from other events that I've done in the past. So for me, that's the benefit. But then again, when you're doing packages, I think it's just easier to manage. It's less on the front end. So when you're doing consultations with clients, it's a lot easier, instead of having to have a full consultation where you're trying to get the whole idea of what the client envisions for an event. It's kind of just like, oh, you want this package? Okay, well, this is how much it is. Here's the transaction. I come set up the package, or I drop off the items, and then that's it. I'm definitely a people person. I come from a customer service background, and so I don't mind the consultations as much. So I just passed on the packages, but you guys can definitely use this equation to calculate out your packaging prices, any type of product prices, really. It all applies to that. So I have another question here from Misha from New York, and she asked, how do you figure out pricing for rental items? And I kind of touched base on this in the previous video. I said, you know, whenever you have an event and you purchase items that are reusable, it's kind of the industry standard that those are yours to keep and that you can reuse them for the next event. So what you should do whenever you get any new reusable items is you should have an inventory list. I have an inventory list template in my shop, which I will put in the description below. But you want to have an inventory list to keep track of any of your reusable inventory. Storage is a whole nother separate video that I'll get into one day, because my garage, I don't even want to show you guys that, but you definitely want to keep a list so you can keep track of that. And then as a part of the list, you want to have the item description, and then also an associate. I keep the cost that it was purchased for, and then the associated rental costs. So the best way I would say to figure out your rental costs, it's really up to you. I would encourage you to kind of, there are businesses around that solely do event rentals. I know a lot of us, like, instead of keeping like things like linens or tables and chairs in stock in our personal inventory, we work with other rental companies for that. So I would encourage you to kind of like just check around your region, get on their website and kind of see what they're charging for similar items. So that your pricing can be comparable to what they're charging. Again, you don't want to be lowballing yourself like way lower than what the market average is, and you don't want to be way higher. And that should kind of give you a ballpark idea of how much you want to charge. And then the other thing you want to take into consideration is, like I said, the purchase price. So for me, when I look at a purchase price, if I purchase something for, you know, $100, I don't really want it to take more than 2 to 3 uses for me to have that item paid off, right? And what I mean by paid off is like, now the cost of this item has been covered and I'm already making a profit from it. Again, if you're getting this inventory from a previous event, then you haven't even come out your pocket for that, and that's great, because that means from jump it's all profit for you. But if there are items that you have just purchased in preparation for, maybe like you're like, oh, one day I am going to do this theme and I come across this item that I think would be perfect for this theme, and you just want to pick it up. Now you've invested in this item, and you're looking for a return. So I don't want to have to sit something on the shelf, you know, and have to wait until I use it 5-6 times for me to have made that money back. Another question that someone asked, which is kind of not relevant to this specific pricing conversation, but kind of is brought up in this point, is that she said, oh, you know, I came across these really, really cute items, you know, should I buy them? And for me, it's like, if it's a huge investment, I usually wait until a client contacts me about a theme, right? So if it's like, for example, if you have something like, I'm trying to think of like a really outlandish theme, like let's say Star Wars. Star Wars is not outlandish, people do Star Wars parties all the time, but like, is Star Wars as popular as like unicorn parties for little girls? No, right? So if I come across something that's super cute for like Star Wars party or some other theme, like let's say something crazy, I'm gonna show my age with y'all right now, but like a Goofy movie, right? Because that was my stuff back in the day. But if I come across some like paraphernalia that I'm like, oh, that would be so dope for a party for a Goofy movie, the likelihood of me having a Goofy movie event pop up, you know, someone asked me for that theme event, is hugely unlikely. So now if I sit here and I spend $100 on this item, it's really, really not likely that I'm gonna get my return back quickly, if at all, right? So I don't encourage you guys to go out and purchase things just because it's cute or just because, you know, you think you might want to use it one day. I encourage you, if you can, to wait until a client comes to you, because again, the benefit of that is that the client is covering the cost of that and it doesn't have to come out of pocket for you at all. But if you do come across cute small things like, you know, a nice dessert stand, like dessert stands are always a hot commodity, you know, for event designers, because we're always doing treat tables. So if you're, you know, at the store and you see some dessert stands for like $5, like grab that. You're gonna make that, you know, that investment back probably after the first or second time that you use it. But if it's gonna be something that's not gonna be popular and you're gonna be able to use quickly, and it's, you know, has a high purchase cost, I wouldn't invest in it. And finally, the last thing that I want to talk about was a question from Michelle. I'm not sure where Michelle is from, but Michelle said that, you know, she's been doing events for a while and that she constantly has clients complaining about how much she charges. She actually did an event recently, and they complained, I guess the client's guests were telling her that she shouldn't have paid that much for that event. The best advice that I can give you guys for that is to not pay too much attention about what clients say about your pricing. Your pricing is your pricing, and you should stick to it. I would say your biggest concern with pricing should be that you have an equation behind whatever your pricing is so that you can back it up and you can support it, right? So, I mean, if it ever comes down to that, which hopefully it doesn't, but you know, if you ever comes down to it, you can break down the cost of why exactly you're charging this person, what you're charging them. If you ever had to go to court for whatever reason, you have a breakdown of you know, how you got to this number and how they're charging them, and that's all that you need for yourself. Clients, no offense to them, they're not professionals for a reason, so they really have no idea of the behind the scenes, what goes into event planning, you know, how many man hours that you put into planning these events. They feel like, oh, I can get this same item on Amazon for $10 and you're charging me $15. And I'm like, yeah, but I also have to, or not Amazon, but from Walmart, I can go get it myself. Yeah, but I have to use my gas. I then have to take it home. I have to customize it for your event, et cetera, et cetera. Like they have no idea. People go on Pinterest and they find these pictures, and you know, you can literally you can pull up a picture on your phone right now from Pinterest of a party. You can pass it around to the average person and ask them how much they think that event should cost, and it's nowhere near what the actual cost would be. So definitely don't get discouraged by that. Some people aren't going to be able to afford you. That's okay. That shouldn't discourage you, especially if this is something that if this is something to you that's more than just like a side hustle, and this is really something that you build a career in. The two things that you have to be firm on is your pricing and your policies. Don't let anyone shift you from either of those, because it's going to be really hard for you to have a sustainable business with you kind of giving every time somebody has a complaint. I know another person, I think it was the same person, they said, you know, they were concerned that this person was going to go leave them a bad review. You cannot be afraid of negative reviews. All negative reviews is an opportunity, right? Like if someone's happy, try to sit there and take yourself out. If someone's unhappy, try to sit there and take yourself out of, you know, the equation, take a step back and look at it from the consumer's perspective, right? Try to figure out if there was anything differently that you could have done, any way else that you could have handled it. And if it wasn't, and this is solely, you know, just a pricing thing, like, you know, buyer's remorse, you told them what the cost was, they've spent it, now they're feeling, you know, oh, I wish I didn't spend all this money. They're going to lash out on somebody, and it's probably going to be you. So don't let, you know, negative reviews hinder you from sticking to your policy. The majority of amazing companies, amazing small businesses and large businesses out there, if you go on Google or any website where they allow reviews, very few of them have perfect scores. There's always someone that's not going to be happy, and so you can't, you know, build your business around making sure that everybody is 100% happy. If you do get a negative review, the best thing that I can tell you to do is to respond to respond to good reviews as well, but definitely respond to all negative reviews. Kind of put the review in context, because if other consumers are also smart, you know, I think have in the world of technology understand that a lot of times people go on reviews just to vent about personal, you know, something that may have been somewhat their fault. It could have just been a one-off circumstance that, you know, is not indicative of the service of this company as a whole. And so people go through and they read not only the reviews but your response to it. So kill them with kindness, give a detailed description of what exactly happened and why it happened that way, and let the other customers who might see that negative review make their own decision about if they want to do business for you. So stick to your policies and don't be afraid to get a negative review. So I think that's it. This video is way longer than I expected, but I hope that you guys got a little bit more insight into the equation in the previous video that I did. If you guys have any questions or anything else that you want to know pertaining to pricing, please let me know in the comments below. Like I said, I'm trying to post weekly. So if there's anything that you guys want me to address or touch on, definitely let me know in the comments so that way I know what to discuss in the next video. I think my next video is actually going to be about contracts, because I know a lot of people have asked me about contracts, and I actually have a contract template also in my shop, which is in the link below. So if you need help with contracts, you can definitely take a shortcut and go purchase one of those. If not, and you want to kind of start from scratch, I'll kind of be giving a little bit of a breakdown pretty soon about how to kind of an outline of how you should set up your contract. So thank you guys again for listening to me, and I hope I'm helpful, and I hope everybody's business is doing great and everyone's doing great, and I'll see you next time.